We're getting there.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Well, I'm trying here. There we go. It's like really slow. I don't know why. It's making me go through this whole crazy email thing. I don't know why. All right, check my Gmail, not there. Email. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this or not. Let me look here. I'll check my text messages. I don't see anything there. All right, guys. I didn't anticipate such strange happenings here. Although I do see an email from Tim here. All right, why? Enter username, continue. It tells me a message was sent to me, but I'm not seeing the message.
From Tim?
No, from Facebook.
Well, are you hearing anything from Tim? Or you want me to reach out to him?
Tim's not joining us.
Okay.
Okay, now enter code.
Hey, Phyllis. Still happy?
Me too.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, it's nice to have something to every now and then think about and just smile, right?
Yep.
For sure. Okay, maybe we're going
Virtual.
live. Maybe. Let's try again. Okay. Well, I'm assuming we're live stream here, folks. I'm going to double check. Should tell me on my Facebook, right? All right. We are live and welcome everybody. We are discussing different denominations of the Christian faith. I'm not sure what all we're looking at tonight, but I'm sure it will be interesting. Please leave your comments on Facebook. We can answer them, or you can look on there for the code and join us live. Take it away, Pastor Diane.
Well, the first thing I want to do is share your screen, share my screen. So I'm hitting share screen on the bottom.
Okay.
And there we go.
We're not seeing it. Do I need to give you permission?
Now?
Nope.
Seeing it now?
No. Give me a second here. I can give everybody permission to share screen. Just takes me a minute to figure out. There, you should have it now.
Okay, clicking it again.
Try it again.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, today we're going to talk about the Anglican, from which the Episcopal Church derives. Can you see it there? It broke away from the Catholic Church on 1534. And we're not going any further than the Anglican and the Episcopalians today because there is plenty to look at just from them. But the point I want to make out to you is the Anglican Church pulled away from the Catholic Church in 1534. So that's the long and the short of what I need to do there. So I guess I'm going to give this back to you, Melanie.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Screen sharing part I'm in.
Okay.
So what happened in 1534? Well, guess what? King Henry got a little upset at the Pope, King Henry VIII, because the Pope wouldn't annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, right? Wouldn't do it. So the Pope said, well, I'm going to create my own church. In steps the Church of England. And in case you didn't know it, it was a break completely with the Roman papacy, and it established that Church of England, which was a completely independent church. Later, it's an Anglican church, and the Episcopalians come out of the Anglican. Now, Anglican is a church, but it's more like an idea. So just speaking with you about this at the beginning, if I can. going back, and I have some notes to go through here, so excuse me. The Anglicans believe that there is only one God, three elements, God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, that human beings made a decision to reject God and to live their own way. Sounds right to me so far, right? And that created a break between God and man. So, yeah, well, that is what happened. But basically, the Anglican Church is not all that different from the church the way it was in Rome as far as the way they celebrate, right? So I'm going to move you right away to what happened in England was that the monasteries there, that they were suppressed. Okay, nope. Because Henry really didn't want the Church of England to break away. He wanted it to remain Catholic, although he wanted it to be separate from Rome. But we all know what happened to old Henry VIII. He didn't make it around too much longer, right? So then after his birth comes Edward the Sixth. Now, this young fellow was only 9 years old when he became king. But
Nine.
9 years old.
That is one young king. That's even younger than Tut, I think.
Well, I don't know much about Tut, but the thing of it is, Edward was a pretty smart little fella. Now, the country had some protectors that ran on his behalf, but he wanted to change some of the stuff about it. So he went, and that's exactly what he did. He made the king the head of the church, right? The Bible, they made it in English, and their churches were plain and simple, a lot like you think about when you think about the Mormons. The only thing they really had to celebrate was a crucifix, because he thought idolatry was not the thing to do in any way, shape, or form, right? And he thought it was his idea or his call in life to get rid of it. So all the candles, all the gold cups, the stained glass, all of that went away. And he made sure that he put the Catholic bishops in the Tower of London. So not a particularly happy time for England. But then you get into that time in the 1500s where you had the Protestants. So this gentleman, or I should say young fellow, died shortly after he took on the kingdom. He only lasted a few more years. He had tuberculosis 1 month after he issued the 42 Articles. So then his sister, Mary, comes into power. And have you ever heard of Bloody Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's who this girl was. She was
I was just wondering.
Roman Catholic, and she wanted all of this to be undone and have that Church of England restored to Catholicism. Mary's favorite way of getting rid of the Protestants was to burn them at the stake. She burned nearly 300 of them, actually.
Sheesh.
So then you had Elizabeth I became queen. That was just like 5 years later. And
What happened to Mary?
well, I'm not sure. Sounds like a Google thing.
Sounds like a Google thing. I gotta go wash some black paint off my hand, and then I shall Google how long Bloody Mary lived. I just sat here and had a black paint explode on my hands.
Well, while you go ahead and do that, I want to I'll talk to the rest of us about
Okay.
what do you suppose God thinks about wars that are theoretically for religious reasons and to do things like that? How can people convince themselves that that's the right thing to do?
Well, I'm sure God's not very happy about it.
Well, yeah, me too. But look, we fought the Crusades, right? We do all of these things in the name of religion that I'm not too sure God is particularly happy about. And even the first one that put the Catholic priests in the Tower of London, you know, I'm not too sure, that was a debtor's prison, right?
But even look back in biblical times, I mean, the tribes of Israel, they were fighting too. So they had wars too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's different things, just trying to separate them in my mind. Wars that God tells them to take on, and wars that they just sort of figure they have the right to do. But it sort of reminds me of how we just like to, this whole story of this beginning of the Church of England just reminds me of how we just demonize each other these days.
Are you ready to hear about Bloody Mary?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us what happened to the little bugger.
She ruled just 5 years.
Yep.
She died at the age of 42 during an influenza epidemic, but she had also been suffering from abdominal pain and may have had uterine or ovarian cancer. So there you have it. She didn't die in any horrible way. I was thinking she was killed. So
I don't think uterine
apparently
cancer.
not.
That would be sort of bad.
Yeah.
So the Episcopal Church was born out of the Church of England, right? And the Episcopal Church was an American really thing. The American Episcopal Church came as an aftermath when we were doing our revolution. Was right? And the first parish of the Episcopalians came in Virginia in 1607, right? The Charter of Virginia Company of London. And there happened to be a tower in the Jamestown Church, and it's the oldest surviving Anglican church, because remember, the Episcopalians, the Anglicans is sort of an idea. Then here in the United States in 1789, representatives of the clergy from 9 dioceses met in Philadelphia, and they gave it its constitution. So you might as well say it had its real solid beginnings in 1800 in Philadelphia.
And that was the Episcopalians.
It wasn't until 1958 that a coalition of the liberal church members succeeded in passing this resolution. The natural dignity and value of every man, whatever color or race, is created in the image of God. And it called the Episcopalians to work together in charity and forbearance toward the establishment of all people, including education, employment, etc. Right? And they had a European, or Episcopal, I don't know why I said European, Society for Culture and Racial Unity. That came in 1959, right? Here you go, guys. In 1976, the General Convention permitted ordination of women and recognized, because they had 15, what they were basically not legitimate women ordained. And then decided in 1976 that it was okay. So then they back ordained or preordained or past ordained the other 15.
Wow.
The first woman to become a bishop, her name was Barbara Harris, and she was only consecrated in 1989.
Wow.
Seemed a little bit behind the time. The Episcopal Church affirmed this in 1976, that homosexuals are children of God who deserve acceptance and pastoral care from the church and equal protection under the law. The first openly gay person was Ellen Bartlett in 1977, right?
So this is the Episcopal Church?
Mm-hmm. The Episcopal Church that was in the United States. Yep.
They were ahead of their time in that respect.
In 1915, the 78th convention decided that they would have removed the definition of marriages between one man and one woman. So it took them until 1915 to do that.
1915 or 2015?
2015, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Whew. I was a little confused there.
So as of a couple of years ago, they had 1.7 million members. So do you get how these two have I in all of my muddled ways here today? Do you get how the Anglican Church is sort of like a type of church, and it included the Church of England, and from that then came the United States Episcopalians.
Okay, so they came from the Anglicans.
Yes. Yeah, clearly. Because the Anglicans consider themselves both Catholic and Protestant. I don't know how that is, but they do. They're Catholic because they have a lot of the liturgical and sacramental understanding. And they're Protestant in that they're always open to Reformation. They believe in baptism with water in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? And they affirm the real presence of the body and blood in the Eucharist. Catholic in that respect.
Yeah.
Right. Like transubstantiation. Noticeable differences between the two these days. There's no centralized authority figure like the Pope. And lay people play a big part in decision making. They do not require that, like the Catholics, that you go to confession. It's not required. You can do it, but it's not required. And married couples are able to use responsible means of birth control.
So the Episcopalians do have confession if you want to do it.
Yep.
Huh.
Okay.
That I did not know.
I didn't either.
And they do believe in the real presence. You know how the Catholics do with transubstantiation, that the elements turn into the body and blood of Christ. They're right on that. Right. Their official words come in some pretty long things here, but let's run over them just a little. They believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ first and foremost, whose life, death, and resurrection saved the world. Right? They have a legacy of inclusion. Legacy took them a while to get there. The lay people and the clergy, they cooperate. So in that respect, they're almost like the United Church of Christ. And leadership can be expressed by all people, regardless of their sexual orientation or sexual identity, is the way they put it. So that's a little bit about what they are. They believe that God loves you, no exceptions. As a matter of fact, I think that's the note that Rhett put on our marquee today. Right.
It was a nice day for changing that.
But they do believe in original sin because they think that human life is sacred and it is from inception until death not too good. Oppose abortion. They have two sacraments like the United Church of Christ, baptism and communion, and confirmation, ordination, matrimony, reconciliation of the penitent, which is confession. They're all rites because they weren't begun by Jesus.
How do they look at divorce?
You know what? I don't know that I came across that.
I better Google moment.
Melanie's got a Google time.
Google moment. Took me a minute to spell Episcopalians. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it took me a bit to do. I'd actually had to think it out.
Okay, let's see. The Episcopal canon on marriage, as liberalized in 1931, is still strict and specific. Rectors may only marry those divorced persons who are 1, innocent parties in divorces for adultery, or 2, innocent partners in marriages annulled for premarital cause, whatever that means.
Sounds like they don't marry just divorced people who got divorced because they can't live together anymore.
Right.
Does it say anything about annulment like the Catholics do?
I don't see anything yet, but give me a moment here. Time magazine did something on it apparently. Getting there.
One thing they do ordain transgendered people.
Yeah. If a divorced person who has been in communion with this church, meaning the Episcopal Church, desires to remarry after a reasonable time and desires, as does the partner of the second marriage, the blessing of the church. This might well be bestowed when the parish priest or suitable committee are assured, after examination of the circumstances involved, of the genuine desires and purpose of both participants to lead a Christian life. But no priest unwilling to perform such a ceremony should be required to do so. So it sounds like it's pretty much up to each priest, whether or not they feel like they should or can, but they aren't required to.
No, and I think their priests can marry too.
Yeah, they can.
Did you know if you're a regular, let's say a United Church of Christ, and you're married and you decide to turn Catholic, to become a Catholic priest, you can be a Catholic priest and be married in that circumstance.
Oh, wow. That I
Yeah.
did not know.
Yes.
I was just thinking it could not be done.
And we have the Episcopal Church around the corner, right? Did you ever
Yeah.
see them?
Yes.
They do dress staunchly.
Yeah.
I know a woman priest who is an Episcopalian. Name is Molly. Wonderful lady. Wonderful lady. So I want to then, when Melanie comes back,
I'll be right back.
that's okay.
You know, my neighbor in here, Tom, he is a deacon in the Catholic Church. Now he was married for some time. He was a farmer, and he felt the call, and so he has become a deacon at the church. So everybody refers to him as Deacon Tom. And he can do all the rites and ceremonies at the Catholic Church.
Mhm,
So
sure. The
Sorry, guys.
Episcopalians have deacons too.
I was trying to clean up my
Yeah,
exploded
and
paint
so-
tube and it got me again. I thought, oh, I'll just try to be neat here. And
Well, that's all right. Multitasking will get to you every
That's right.
once in a while.
okay, so what do I need to do?
I'm going to go back to share my screen.
Okay, you can do it.
Okay.
You have
And
permission for all of Bible study.
where is my PowerPoint? I must have, let me call it up again. Okay.
So much for being neat and tidy. It just isn't going to happen here at this table.
All right. So, right here is some conversation about the Anglican Church. Can you all see it from there?
Mhm.
It's the way they are, how should we say, structured. You have the bishops, and the bishop is commissioned. He oversees the church structure and one group of congregations. And their groups of congregations are called dioceses. I have to think, yeah, that's how you. The bishop has the sole right to ordain people in the order of priests, and he has the right to ordain another bishop. And he has to be ordained before he ordains other people. That makes sense. Then below him, you have the priest, who is a member of the Anglican Church, and he's been commissioned to preside over the gatherings like Holy Communion, right? He gets to extend God's forgiveness, and he's a person who the priest has previously, who is a priest, as a priest, no, a person who is a priest has to previously be ordained as a deacon. So you have to be a deacon before you're a priest.
See, our church used to have deacons and elders, and we just, about 15, 20 years ago, eliminated it.
Yeah, now it's just consistory.
The
Yeah.
old pins are on the outside closet out in the narthex.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are. So the deacon has to continue with his responsibilities, being a deacon after he's been promoted to a priest. So you don't get to get rid of your old things. You still have to do them with it as well as being a priest. Then underneath is the deacon, and he's also a member of the clergy, a clergy in the church. And he has the authority to proclaim the gospel and assist in communion. So Phyllis, guess what? He's you.
Okay.
That's Phyllis.
They can assist in the ministry of service and healing, which is an important part of the church. And they have the authority to set an example for believers and the responsibility to claim the gospel and encourage the church in its ministry. So congratulations, you are a deacon. Let me go back. So they have some other church
I was a deacon.
positions. What?
I was just saying, I was a deacon way back when we used to have deacons and elders.
Yeah, there
I
you
was
go.
an elder too.
Well, there you go. And they have a position that they call other positions, which I think is pretty funny. Well, I mean, it's not descriptive. Other positions include chaplains who give temporary order to fulfill administration function of the Baptist in absence of the Baptist. Did you know in the United Church of Christ, if someone wants to be brought into the church and the pastor is not available, that members of the consistory would be able to do it?
No, that's pretty cool.
No.
Yes. There are commissaries who are appointed to fulfill that. And there's also something called the canon, which is basically an honorary title conferred upon members of the clergy as well as the other people, right? That's the Anglican. Bishop, priest, deacon, and other positions. Now here's the Episcopal Church. There's the church canons, which what they're saying is the Bible and what the Bible says and what the church has agreed to believe in. That's number one. Then you have the rector, the vestry, the general convention, the House of Bishops, and the House of Deputies. So now we're going to talk about those a little bit. The church canons, the Episcopal Church abides by the canons, which are nothing but rules and laws to be followed. The national church called the diocese, the providence, and every parish have to agree to obey these sets of laws. That's pretty cool when you think about it, though, right? In the hierarchy of the church is the word of God. The rector acts as the parish, heads the parish, in the Episcopal Church. And the church vestry guides the elected clergy in maintaining all facets of the church. So that's our consistory. And some people call it church council. To render any kind of education to the parishioners, dealing with the financial or other church businesses, or reaching out to the community is the responsibility of the vestry. There we go. The rector doesn't interfere with all the other matters, but he does voice any opinion on vestry unless there's a tie. So in essence, in our world, the consistory gets to decide everything, and the rector only comes in those comments and ways if there's a tie, which wouldn't work in our church because I'm not even allowed to vote.
Well,
Okay,
is the
back up a
vestry
minute. Back up a minute. You mean if somebody wanted to join our church, become an active member, and you weren't available, the consistory could accept him as a member?
Yeah. Say for example, you had somebody particularly in the hospital or something, and somebody wasn't available. You can bring somebody into the church based upon their declaration of faith. If the pastor's not available, yep.
Then it would be what, the president of the consistory?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that it's been decided who, just as long as there are several of you.
So it could be 3 or 4 of you, whoever.
Now, in our church, we make a big deal out of bringing somebody into the church. But if you had a circumstance where the pastor wasn't available, and particularly if it had to be done, maybe somebody is on his deathbed and decides he wants to join the church, y'all could do it.
So back to this thing you have on the screen. It sounds to me like in their church, the vestry would be what we would call our consistory.
Yep.
And the
exactly.
rector would be the name for each individual member.
Mm.
So each member of the vestry is a rector.
The rector heads the parish.
Oh, so that would be like the
So
pastor.
it's like the pastor.
Okay, okay.
It says the vestry, if the vestry is members of the parish, elected treasurer,
Okay.
junior warden. I have no idea what a
That
junior
sounds very
warden is.
prison-like.
The clerk and 6 members. Only the senior warden is selected as the rector of the head of it. So it sounds more like that's the
The head of
head
their,
of the consistory. Yeah.
right.
Members who are at large enjoy the responsibility for a 3-year term and give a break between 1 year before eligible to be re-elected. In our church, it's perpetuity. No,
That's
it seems like it sometimes.
Pretty much, yes.
Yep.
It didn't
They
used to be.
No, I
when there was
remember
a
there
lot
used to
more
be a,
active members, that wasn't the case.
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
back when we had lots and lots of people there where they were actually like,
well, you should
almost
give
campaigning.
other people a chance because you get new ideas that way.
right.
The general
I agree.
convention. What'd you say, Phyllis? You
I said,
agree?
I agree. I think
Yeah.
not having terms is ridiculous.
Well, we are going to rewrite our constitution, so we got
We
to.
don't have
Yeah.
enough people
I
to
think
take
we need
over.
to-
That's the trouble.
Well, or I don't know about that. We
Well,
got lots of people
but-
now. When you have to figure you have 25% of the church in the church consistory, that's a lot of people. Friends
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so you also have in this church a general convention, which is the governing and the legislative body of the church known as the General Convention. It consists of the House of Bishops, House of Deputies. The chief pastor is also elected. It presides over the proceedings. Convention meets once every 3 years. So it sounds a little like our association meetings or our synod, probably even more, right?
Yeah.
The House of Bishops, I got to move you guys here over on this side. The House of Bishops is bishops that's active and retired bishops that are elected by the General Convention to form the House of Bishops, one of the 2 houses. We have House of Bishops, House of Deputies. According to the laws of the General Convention, they meet every 3 years for legislative purposes. In addition to that, they also meet twice a year, but not for voting. Changes to the legislation are made only after a consensus is reached between the House of Bishops and the House of Deputies. So it runs sort of like the United States House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Deputies, one of the General Convention houses, it consists of 8 representatives from every diocese in the Episcopal Church. A particular geographical area is covered by the diocese. From the 8 representatives, 4 are lay and 4 are clergy. The president is elected to the House of Deputies during the General Convention every 3 years, and the meeting is attended by more than 900 members. So that's like our synod. So I'm going to turn this back over to you, Melanie, as soon as I get myself wide again. Yeah, if I can figure out how to do that. Okay. So do you think all of this has taught you a little and you know now some of what the Anglican and the Episcopalian churches are about?
Mm-hmm. I've always thought the Episcopalians are closer Catholic than not.
Yeah, they're sort of like the Lutherans, Catholic light. seems like.
Yeah, yeah.
Although, like I said, I'm in love with a couple of the Episcopalians I met during the interim pastor relationships. They do some pretty cool things.
I always thought the Episcopal Church was directly out of the Catholic Church rather than coming out of the Anglican. I
Nope.
always thought they were just like one step down.
Catholic light.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
ultimately in this whole thing, you're going to see, and I didn't make it part of this week's because I thought we would be getting too many things, but the Methodists come out of the Anglican and Episcopal Church as well. That happened in the 1700s. So you have the
I knew there was
Methodists and the Pentecostals coming out of that too.
What's interesting, because I've been to
knew there was
lots of
something wrong
Methodist
with those Methodists.
services, and they're very, very similar to ours. Like you could take one liturgy and flip flop them back and forth, and it would be very similar.
Mhm. So we haven't taken a full hour today, but I wanted just to give you what you needed, but not too much to throw you over the top.
To make
But
our
it's-
brain explode.
Yeah, well, coming from the Catholic Church, it makes sense that some of the higher liturgies and stuff like that would touch their hearts because they're used to it, same as Lutherans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a little weird to know that they came from Henry VIII, though. Can't get divorced, off with their head, sort of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got to admire that little 9-year-old. He looked like he did some good work.
He did a lot
And
of
your
work for a
sister
young kid.
undid most of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but he had another sister after that fixed it back up again.
So it was just a little family feud back and forth kind of thing.
Sibling rivalry.
Yes, definitely.
Siblings something, but but isn't it nice though? You do, when you think about it, you don't like the way things happen, you can make your own church. I mean, let's face it, that's one of the things that started Roxy's questioning this. Google how many Christian denominations there are, Melanie.
8 million. I don't know. Let's see.
Oh, well, 8 million. That might be a little much.
How many Christian denominations are there?
And by the way, the Anglicans and the Episcopalians, they do the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed and the other creed. That
We used to do those a lot, those two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know they touch your heart. I try to bring them in once in a while.
It looks like it depends on who you talk to. The Oxford University Press in 1982 estimated 21,000 denominations. But then there's a but. So let's see what the but was.
Okay.
If it'll come up here. I gotta get to the but. Okay. And the updated World Christian Encyclopedia estimated at least 33,000. Now, a denomination is defined as an organized Christian group within a country. So, they may not all be Christian according to that. The
Okay, just
on,
look in Belfont. You have the new one, Watergate.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. There's new ones popping up all the time.
Well, they haven't made necessarily their own. But
They're not their own
I
denomination.
really don't know which denomination they find themselves
Yeah,
in.
they're just independent churches that are out there doing their own
Right.
thing.
Sure.
Let's see. We have global Christianity. Let's see what they say. Of course, they have to give you 18,000 things and they don't get to the point. But it looks like, from what I'm just going through, about between 30 and 33,000, they think, for different Christian denominations.
that was what, 1982?
19, well, yeah, and some of them were a little more new, but yeah, 2012, I think, in one
hard
of
to
them.
imagine.
I
That's hard to
know.
imagine.
I mean,
Well,
they must be
trust me,
splitting hairs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You
unless
know, and you can, if you got the Methodist, you got the Free Methodist, you got, just add
Yeah.
another something to your name
Yeah.
and away you
United
go.
Methodist, yeah. Same thing with the Baptists. Look how many Baptist strains there
Yeah.
are. There's the Southern Baptist and there's the Baptist and
Yeah.
AMEs, yeah, you got tons of them.
And you have really conservative
Yeah.
Baptists and you have Baptists that are very O and A. So it's hard to.
yeah.
Okay, the World Christian Database represents over 9,000 Christian denominations, but they're still saying here between 33 and 41,000. So a lot. We can
Yeah.
just say that, a lot.
Well, Roxy, you don't want to study them all, do you?
No, I don't think so. I had to have started about 50 years ago.
Yeah. Do one a day.
Yeah.
So from the Anglican and the Episcopalians, you get the Methodists and the Pentecostals. So that's where I want to go next week.
Okay.
And then once we do that, we will have the whole upper deal of that, and we'll have the Calvinists. And after that, we will be in the Baptist, and us, which is the Congregationalists, and how the United Church of Christ goes on. So I'm assuming that you want to get a little more detailed when it comes to the United Church of Christ and
Yes.
how it was come about, and some of their neat things like the Burial Hill Declaration. I love that, and there's a lot of cool things. So,
Yeah, 'cause like I said before, ours used to be, when I first started going, it was Reformed, then it was Evangelical and Reformed, and
Yep.
Have you been at our church
there's three names that I can remember.
Has our church been yours your whole life, Rox?
Yep.
Yeah.
The only
That's what I
church I've
thought.
ever went to.
Well, I haven't been at St. John's all the time, but my church started out as an evangelical and reformed start as well. So.
Oh, I went to
And I
Brethren
started
in
going.
Christ and then Baptist. I never felt at home till I came to our church, but
United
Your
Church
mom
has-
and dad's Baptist.
The United Church of Christ was the first to ordain a black pastor, first one to ordain a woman, first to ordain a gay man. We did a lot of things.
a lot of firsts.
Yeah. And then there was that slave ship that we got upset at, and we went through the streets of the city with people who spoke Afrikaan. I think it was Afrikaan. And when they identified themselves, we went to court for them, and they were all able to return to their homeland.
Nice.
I'm pretty proud of that when you think about it.
That's pretty awesome.
Okay, so I anticipate next week to then you want to do the Amish, Mormons, and Jehovah before you get to us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we'll spend more time on us.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, and then I'm going to say we probably have another month in this whole thing, which will put us just about the beginning of Lent.
And Amish will be really interesting too.
The Amish, Mormons, and Jehovah's Witnesses, I think they will all three be very interesting.
Yes, for sure.
All right, so what I'll do is I'll do the Methodists and the Pentecostals for next week, and I'll have a sneak peek at the other ones to see whether we can do them all justice in 1 week or if we have to split them up. Does that sound great to you, Bill?
Yep.
Sounds good.
you
No.
think you can throw in the Mennonites there too.
Oh, that's a good
wherever You're
idea.
doing the Amish.
They're about
and the
they're
Mennonites.
like Amish light.
Yeah.
And then Brethren in
Yep.
Christ is like the next step down from that. So
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we might be talking 5 weeks.
All right. Well, I will talk us off a line here, and we can